Hey guys, what's up? Nick here once again, and today we're going to be ranking the top 10 worst levels in Twisted Metal. So let's get right into it. First things first, yes, I will be taking into account every single game in the Twisted Metal series into this top 10 list. However, I will be excluding levels that are boss battles, or specifically just for a boss battle. The one caveat on that is if the level contains a regular battle and then the boss comes out on said level, that one will be included. I'm just not including any of the levels that are specifically just a boss arena or boss battle, just because I feel like we could do our own top 10 list of just boss battles in Twisted Metal. So with that being said, we're going to start at number 10 and go down the line from pretty bad to the worst of the worst. So starting out at number 10 is going to be Transylvania in Twisted Metal Head On. The main reason I put Transylvania on this list is because it's just disappointing. I really love the atmosphere of this level, I love the soundtrack, and I like the idea of Twisted Metal taking place in more of a supernatural world. And being in Transylvania, as you guys know, it's like the home of Dracula, vampires, and you get all this creepy, spooky Halloween vibes. I love it, I love the aesthetics. But that's where the good sadly stops. The level is just way too large for its own good. And Head On does have some rather large levels, but this really takes the cake as just way too much open space where nothing is happening. You can go literal minutes without finding an opponent by just driving around the map, finding little nooks and crannies and places to explore, which in reality is, you might look at that and say, oh, that's kind of cool. It's extra gameplay. There's things to find, there's secrets to behold, but not really. It's really just open land and nothing to really see and nothing to really do. But I want to be in the battle. I want to be fighting people. And when you really are just nonstop trying to find people on a level, I think that's a really big issue. If they would have trimmed the fat of Transylvania, just basically removed all the outer layer of the outside portion outside of the moat, and just had the battle take place in the castle, I think it would have been a much better level, and I doubt it would have made it to this list. So yeah, that's why Transylvania is on number 10. Moving on to number 9 is going to be Freeway Free For All from Twisted Metal 1. This one was kind of tough because I honestly did not want to add any levels from TM1 just because I wanted to give it a little bit of a pass being that's the first game in the series. But then I thought about it and I'm like, well, you know what? I got to be critical here, and it is a top 10 list. And even though I'm pretty biased, obviously, when it comes to Twisted Metal, that I look past a lot of the game's flaws and say that they're really good, I have to look at this in a critical sense, and Free For All is probably one of the worst maps in the entire game of Twisted Metal 1, so I figured it had to go on this list. But that's also why it's only at number 9 and not any lower. But Freeway Free For All is essentially just a giant circle. There is some twists and turns to it, of course. It's not just a circle, but there's not much going on here. It's just a freeway. It's pretty narrow. Sometimes it's hard to turn around fast enough to get away from enemies. If you're stuck in a certain corner, or if you're stuck in the middle of the freeway section, you can get into some really annoying spots where you want to get away from the action to go find health, and you just get nonstop shot at because the enemy AI is very aggressive in this game. And that's not even including the little pedestrians that also shoot rockets at you throughout the level, and there really isn't that many weapons to pick up either. I feel like on this level, out of any of the other ones in the entire game, I run out of weapons more time than not. I don't know if that's just me or if it's a skill issue or what, but yeah, Freeway, for some reason, I run out of ammo so often that it just becomes a frustration. So yeah, for me, Free For All is number 9. Moving on to number 8 is Tokyo Rooftops in Twisted Metal Head On. There's a couple levels I wanted to put on this list, but I decided to remove them, and the reason for that is because I was only going to put them on the list because the levels were forgettable. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad or that they're just terrible or frustrating. Whereas for me, Rooftops in Head On is very frustrating, and not in the sense of, oh, it's BS and there's stupid things that happen to make it a frustrating experience. No. It's a very bland and boring level when every other rooftop level up until Twisted Metal Head On have always been my favorite versions of Twisted Metal levels. And what I mean by that is when you get onto a rooftop level, whether you're in TM1, TM2, TM4, it doesn't matter which game you're playing. If you're on a platform that's up in the air and you have that nonstop fear of I might slide off the edge and insta-die, it adds so much anxiety to the gameplay that makes it more invigorating, and it's very fun. I don't know, I've just always really enjoyed them. I don't really have any gripes towards rooftop levels in the entire series except for this one. And the main reason is that for some reason in Head-On, if you fall off a ledge, you don't die. You just take a little bit of health away and you respawn right back where you were, and you keep up with the fight. This is also really annoying when you're playing a character like Mr. Slam, where you can throw people off the level and have a really fun time, and kind of just, it's always been like a palate cleanser level in a way, where you could just cheese some characters, throw them off, and you get easy kills, but not in this case. You throw them off and they keep reappearing, and it's just rinse and repeat, and it's repetitive, and it feels just way too arcadey for Twisted Metal. I can't really explain it. I just really dislike this level. The soundtrack also is extremely annoying. I've never liked the music on this level at all, but the rest of Head-On soundtracks are pretty good, so this one really just threw me off as like the worst of both worlds, where you get just a really boring level that really doesn't feel like a rooftop. And not only can you not die immediately if you fall off, but they also make it extremely difficult to fall off. They put little railings across all the areas of the level, where the only way you can actually fall off is if you intentionally jump to your death, and even then you don't die. So yeah, this just feels like a really bastardized version of a rooftops level, and that's why it's making it onto number 8. Number 7 is Gridiron Gore from Twisted Metal Small Bro. Now, these next few levels in this list, you're going to see a little bit of a common theme here. They're really just open, plain levels. There's nothing really going on here, and that's why Gridiron Gore makes it on number 7. It's not necessarily a terrible map, but when you compare it to every other level in Small Brawl, which in my opinion have some of the strongest levels in the entire series, it really sticks out like a sore thumb. It's essentially just an open football field. It's way too big. It takes way too long to find weapons, to get from character to character, to join into the fight. It's just very boring. You just fall asleep playing on it. And it's one of those things where you could argue, well, if you went against more enemies at once, it may have made that level a lot better. And I could agree with you on that. But even if you went against like 8 enemies on this level at once, I still think it would have been a pretty boring level. And not only that, but there's just not enough weapons to find on Gridiron Gore. I always find myself looking and searching in every little nook and cranny of this level, trying to find some type of weapon to shoot at, but I end up just having to wait by driving around and getting special weapons to respawn, which just is not fun. It's not engaging. But the reason it's at number 7 and not any lower is because at least you do have some cool aesthetics to this level, like the lawnmower guy who's fallen asleep essentially from drinking with the empty bottle in his hand, and he's moving around the level, and you can actually get a button around the level that will control him to go to the nearest opponent, which does some decent damage. You also can hear the crowd sound effects, which are pretty cool. So if you freeze somebody, the crowd will chant to get them out of the frozen. If you kill somebody, they'll all cheer with glee. There's a couple unique sound effects like that on this level that do add a little bit more ambience to it to bring you into that aesthetic of being on a football field, that I have to give credit where credit is due. But yeah, the rest of it's pretty bland, and that's why it ends up on number 7 of this list. Number 6 is, no surprise, Holland in TM2. I know some people in the comments are going to be like, oh my god, you're putting a TM2 level in the worst maps of the TM. This is instant dislike, you're an idiot. Best game of all time, no issues. Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. I think we can all agree, even if you're a huge TM2 fan and you love this game has a couple stinkers when it comes to the levels. I will say, and I've always said this, TM2 has some of my favorite levels of all time in the Twisted Metal series, and I stand by that. There is some amazing level design in this game. However, Holland is just not that. It's literally just an open, flat square, and you fight against, I think, 9, I could be wrong, it's either 8 or 9 opponents, and yes, it's very difficult, but even if you went against 3 opponents, this map would still suck. I don't care about how difficult the level is. Yes, it's infuriating for me because I don't like TM2 as it is, but putting that aside, even if this level was in like TM4, TM3, whatever, I would still be putting it on this list at this same position just because there's nothing to it. The only things that they added that are a little bit kind of cool are 2 giant windmills that, yes, you can destroy, or you can find a teleporter that brings you up into them to get extra health or weapons. So there is that, but that is literally it. The rest of the map is just an open plain with some weapons scattered around. And the last little piece I will give it is it does have a pretty banger soundtrack, and you do get a lot of weapon pickups and some health pickups, which is nice to see. But yeah, that's pretty much all I can give it. Holland is pretty much a doo-doo map, so that's why it's placing it at number 6. And halfway through now at number 5, You guessed it, Washington, D.C. for Twisted Metal 3. Now, you're probably surprised right now. Wait, this is not the worst map in the series? This is not number 1? I've heard everybody say this has always been the number 1 worst level, and it is kind of funny that this has always been looked at as the worst level in the series, but in reality, it's literally the same level as Holland. The only difference is there's no destructibility aspects, which I have to say, that's why I give Holland a little bit of a legs up, and that's why Washington, D.C. is a little bit lower in this list. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The only difference. You have teleporters just like Holland. You have a big open square level with no real verticality on it. Washington, D.C. does have a little ramp area at one end that brings you up onto the Capitol building, and that's pretty much it. Nothing really too crazy to say or to write home about. Yes, there are 2 little statues in front that you can destroy, but it's not nearly as theatrical as destroying the 2 windmills in Holland. But the major downside to Washington, D.C., in my opinion, is the lack of enemies. So yes, I do find TM2's Holland more infuriating because of the game itself. However, I gotta say that going against more enemies on a small level does make more sense. So I would have liked if we went against at least 4 or 5 enemies to start out with on Washington, D.C. than just 3. Because it makes it a very bland level just because there's not much going on and you can get away from enemies pretty easily. But if you were going against more in one spot, it would have made it more thrilling and more interesting and I think more memorable. The last part is, it is for some reason also a boss battle. So you do fight Darkseid after you've killed everybody in the level, and it just kind of adds more to like, why was this level so lame and like forgotten feeling if they were going to make it a boss battle of all things? It just really, it makes you scratch your head. But we all know the story behind TM3 at this point, that it was a rush development, so we're not going to get into all of that. But it is what it is, and that's why Washington, D.C., as bland as it is going to be put at number 5, even though I do say that the soundtrack is amazing. I love Pitch Shifter, so it does get a leg up because of that. So coming to number 4, in Twisted Metal 4, Minions Maze. The one thing you can say about TM4 is that it does have very good levels. I know there's a lot of people that will shit on this game and they say it's the worst in the series, or it's right next to TM3 as the worst in the series. But you gotta admit, the creativity in the levels of TM4 is unmatched. They are some of the coolest and most memorable maps in the entire series. However, Minions Maze is probably one of the most memorable maps for the worst reasons. This is a perfect example of why we do not want tight, claustrophobic spaces in a Twisted Metal map. Being that it's a maze, the first, second, 50th time you play this level, it's going to be confusing. You're not going to memorize this entire level until you've probably played it at least 30 to 50 to 60 to 100 times. I'm not even kidding you. And it's a pretty big level at that. There's a lot of places to find. There's a lot of secrets to see. And yes, you could look at it as, oh, just like Transylvania, there's a lot of cool things to see and it adds extra gameplay. But it takes you out of the experience of the actual battle, which is Twisted Metal, and which I think is a huge detriment to the gameplay. And a lot of people would agree with me on this. I've had a lot of people play Twisted Metal 4 for the first time and tell me straight up, like, this is the worst map they've ever played, and they just don't want to get past it because it's just too hard to find anybody to fight, or they don't know where they are, or they're just confused. And again, this map should have been like a bonus level or something, like a secret level you had to unlock in some way, shape, or form. It should not have been in the main tournament because it really sticks out like a sore thumb. The only thing that gives it a little bit of saving grace is the lightning that you can find at the very top of the map. And if you get the lightning, it is pretty much an insta-kill for most characters in the game, and it can do a lot of damage to Minion himself once you do fight him. So I have to give him credit where credit is due. The last little bit of credit I'll give it is that it does have a Rob Zombie track, which kicks ass. But yeah, it's so sad that it was wasted on this piece of shit level. So for me, Minions Maze goes into number 4. And now coming down to the wire, number 3 is going to be Drivein Movie from Twisted Metal Black. Now, I'm not going to say it, of course, but I know there's other YouTubers out there, especially Twisted Metal YouTubers, who've made content on these games and stated that Twisted Metal Black is not only their favorite game in the series, but that Drivein Movie is one of their favorite levels of all time. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out why that would be. I absolutely dread this level every time I play Twisted Metal Black. And this is coming from somebody who really loves this game. It used to be my favorite in the entire series. If you haven't checked out my ranking of every Twisted Metal game from the series, I highly recommend checking that out to see which game is my number 1. But yeah, Black used to be my number 1 game of all time. I used to play it all the time, and I still do. I still love this game. But that being said, looking at it as an adult more objectively, I definitely have come to really loathe Drivein Movie. And that's why I always choose Snowy Roads over it every single time I get the option. Snowy Roads is just a better level in every sense of the word. Drivein Movie is essentially just a literal circle arena. There is nothing going on in this level except for the Drivein Movie screen that shows your gameplay, but they've been doing that since the very early games of Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal 4, I think, did it first, and then Small Brawl did it, and now Twisted Metal Black does it. Other than that, there's nothing else in this level. There's a couple weapon pickups to get, there's a couple heals, there is no full heal bridge to find, which is a huge detriment to the gameplay. Yes, it is a challenge, and I know some people, especially people who really love Holland TM2, might fit right at home or feel right at home on this level. We have nowhere to go, you're just going in circles nonstop, and you have a ton of enemies to go against, 8 enemies at that, and again, you have limited health and limited resources at your disposal. So a lot of it is just running in circles. So I guess if you just like driving in circles nonstop, hoping you don't die and hoping you get a lot of good luck, then this is the level for you. But as somebody who likes to use actual strategy in their games and likes to be aggressive but also play defensively from time to time to, again, create a strategy, this level is horrible. There is absolutely no fun to be had here whatsoever. The only time I've ever had a good time on Drivein Movie was when I had a few drinks in me and I just didn't give a shit if I died, and I ended up restarting it about 14 times before I finally finished it. Yes, you could look at this as a skill issue, but honestly, I can get through the entire game with Twisted Metal Black in under 30 minutes without much of an issue, as long as I don't pick this level, because this design is absolute dog shit, and I don't understand why people defend it. So that's why, for me, Drivein Movie is definitely at 3rd place for the worst levels in Twisted Metal. Number 2, and this is again going to ruffle some feathers, but it is the truth, Moscow from TM2. Now, I understand to a degree why some people might enjoy this level. It's not nearly as BS as Drivein Movie, but the reason why it's lower on my list is because of the physics of TM2 mixed with the lack of weapons and health within this level going against 5 opponents on the 2nd level in the tournament. If this took place later in the tournament, I could understand a little bit more as to why you're going against so many enemies on a very tiny dome-like level. But the fact that it's the 2nd one in the entire tournament, and it doesn't give you any indication that you need to carry over weapons from the previous level in order to even fight people on it, is just ridiculous to me. There is very, very little amount of weapon pickups on Moscow, and it's by far the most aggravating aspect of the level. There is, I think, 2 health pickups on the level from time to time, but they very seldomly respawn, so good luck trying to keep those alive without the enemies taking them from you. And on top of that, there is maybe 3 or 4 weapon pickups, but once you pick them up, it takes ages for them to respawn. The only way to really survive on Moscow through a tournament is to get as many weapon pickups as possible before you finish the first level, because it does carry over into Moscow, and then it isn't nearly as bad. But the other issue with Moscow is the bowl-shaped aspect of it, and with the bridges, is the physics of TM2 just kind of gravitate you towards the ledges to run into them really easily. You take a lot of damage, you can roll over super easily going up the lips, and then you have characters like Shadow, which are completely broken, where if his special goes off on an incline, which is literally 90% of this level, he takes about 80% of your health away on a single hit, and he will rapid fire his special non-stop, especially if you're behind him. So all in all, this makes Moscow one of the most frustrating levels in the entire game, and this is again coming from somebody who absolutely dreads playing TM2 and thinks it's the most frustrating game in the series. That's why Moscow, for me, definitely takes the cake at the number 2 spot. Okay, drum roll please. What could be the final number 1 worst level in Twisted Metal history? If you're a fan of the channel, if you've been a part of my live streams, you might already know the answer to this one, but let's get into it. It is Egypt from Twisted Metal 3. I want to say this first off, I do like TM3, I still play it to this day, and I do enjoy it a lot more than TM2. But I'm not blind to the fact that TM3 has the worst level in the entire series of games, which is Egypt. I understand it has some good qualities to it. I like the color palette, I like the music, and I do like the idea that there is a way to break into one of the pyramids to find not 1, but 2 environmental hazards, which is pretty cool. but that's where everything goes to shit. The physics of TM3 are no stranger to pretty much anybody who's played these games. They are very infamous for being sluggish, you roll over nonstop, they're very tough to get a hang of. So all of this mixed together really makes you scratch your head as to why they made a level that is this hilly. It's the only level in the entire game that doesn't have angled inclines, which are flat. This is the only level that has rounded inclines. And the problem with this is that the cars, especially top heavy vehicles like Sweet Tooth or Hammerhead, just flip over nonstop without you having to do anything. It's very infuriating. And on top of that, if you're flipped over and you get shot by missiles, you can go skidding across the entire level and essentially get stuck upside down the entire time and just get destroyed. And this is just playing on normal. If you're playing it on pure lunacy, which is the hardest difficulty, good luck. You're going to die almost every single time. And not only that, if you're in the tournament mode, you have to go against 6 opponents total, but they do it in a regeneration sense. So you go against 3 at the beginning, which gives you kind of a false sense of, oh, it's only 3 characters and this is a pretty big map. This should be pretty easy. But once you go through the pain of actually killing all 3 and hopefully not dying, now you have to kill 3 more that have just spawned. And this is, by the way, in a game where through the entire tournament, you're only given 3 lives. So at this point, if you haven't died, you have to survive 6 opponents on the worst level in the entire series. That makes it so difficult not to flip over and be taken advantage of. So yeah, Egypt is by far the most infuriating level in the entire series, mixed with the physics from TM3 just not working in correlation with the actual design of the level, and just overall being kind of a bland set piece. It gets old very fast. Again, the only cool area is underneath the pyramid, but once you've seen it once, it's pretty much all you need to see. So yeah, Egypt is easily #1, the worst map of all time in Twisted Metal. So that is it for my top 10 worst levels in the Twisted Metal series. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Is my list accurate or do you disagree? Let me know. And if you do disagree, give me your top 10 of your worst levels in the Twisted Metal series. Coming up in the future, I'm going to be making more videos like this, by maybe making like a top 10 best levels, or top 10 best characters, top 10 worst characters. The list goes on. I have a lot of ideas written down and I'm excited for you guys to check them out. But with that, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like, share, support as always. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We'll hopefully see you in the next one. Peace out, everybody. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of the video. Before we head out, I want to give a huge special thank you to our channel members. These are amazing people who are wanting to support the channel and the content here. And if you want to do the same, you can click the little join button underneath every single new upload. And in becoming a channel member not only supports me and the channel, but also gives you a ton of perks in doing so, including early access to new content and being a part of exclusive polls and information that other people would not be able to access. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you again so much for the love and support, and we'll hopefully see you in the next one. Peace out.